In this week's Parashat Korah, we have the great rebellion of Korah against Moshe Rabbeinu, the rebellion against Aharon HaKohen, and in fact, we've spoken in the past that it's difficult to even see, is it a rebellion against Moshe? Does Korah want to be the leader? Is it a rebellion against Aharon? Does he want to be the Kohen Gadol? We should all be Kohanim, we should all be equals. Is this a rebellion of a firstborn? Because Korah comes from the firstborn Levi side who had lost the Kehuna to the Kohanim. Is this like a Bechor fight? Because we're going to see that there's people from the tribe of Reuven. We have Datan and Aviram that are joining in this battle against Moshe and Aharon. So it's not clear what is the exact leadership they're attacking, and maybe there's different groups that joined up, each one vying for power in a different kind of way. And normally when you have a rebellion, that's kind of what happens. Everyone realizes they can't be everything. Actually, we spoke in the past about the greatness of On ben Pellet's wife. On ben Pellet's wife is telling him, you think you're going to be the leader with all these people over here, all these people making a balagan right now? You're not going to be on top. Korah will be on top. Datan and Aviram will be on top. Everyone else is going to find their roles. There'll be new leaders, new Kohanim. I'm going to get you drunk, put you to bed, and I'll take care of you. And she saves On ben Pellet's life. Okay, but I want to speak in this Dvar Torah about Datan and Aviram, because we have Datan and Aviram. This is this evil duo. This is like the anti-Moshe and Aharon, that we see them throughout the Torah making a balagan. Actually, the truth of the matter is, this is really the only time we see them as the real Datan and Aviram, that are part of this rebellion, that don't want to speak to Moshe Rabbeinu, don't even want to have anything to do with him. And throughout the Torah, all the times there were problems going on, the problems were always behind the scenes. Whenever people were fighting, if the two people fighting back in Egypt, oh, that's Datan and Aviram. There's the Egyptian hitting somebody, oh, that's Datan. There's people that are not having emunah when it comes to the man, and are going out on Shabbat to find new man, or aren't taking a double portion, or that's Datan and Aviram. There are people that are complaining, why are you making us work so hard? Moshe, you went to Paro, you made it worse for us, and now we have to make the bricks as well. That's Datan and Aviram. So throughout the time, whenever we have ourselves these arguments against Moshe Rabbeinu, Chazal tell us that it's Datan and Aviram. But this parsha is the one parsha where it's really out there in the open. We get to know their names, and it's really ramazim, it's hints in the psukim in the past that make us realize, oh, it must be the same people. It's the same words being used, the same actions that are happening. Oh, it must be the same Datan and Aviram. So I had a thought this year that, okay, Datan and Aviram, we know, they're like the the yin and yang of Moshe and Aharon. They're like the negative version of it. But I was wondering, maybe we can say that we can actually break them up a little bit more. That Datan is the anti-Moshe, and Aviram is the anti-Aharon. Now, first off, when it comes to Datan and Aviram, Chazal tell us that they were the Nogsim. They were those intermediary Jews that were like, they were the ones in charge of the Jewish slaves. We had Jewish slaves that had to work. Now, some people tried to compare them to the capos in the Holocaust, those Jews that worked for the Nazis and were terrible, evil people. That's not what the Datan and Aviram were based on the Midrash, because the Midrashim tell us that the Nogsim, these middle-level Jewish managers, they actually would take the pain of the whipping. When the Egyptians said, okay, for example, when Moshe went to Paro and said, okay, let my nation go, and he says, no. Now not only do you have to make the bricks, you got to find the hay, you got to find the tevin, you got to make the bricks from scratch. If they wouldn't make the same amount of bricks, so who would be punished? It would be these middle-level leadership. So the Datan and Aviram actually accepted upon themselves the pain and suffering, the makot, for the sake of the rest of the Jewish people. Actually, that might be part of the reason why Hashem saves them, keeps them alive. They didn't die in Makat Choshech. They didn't, they make it all the way through. We've spoken in the past, maybe a couple of other reasons why they make it through, but they, in a certain sense, they were really there for the Jewish people and took the pain. It also explains why right now they're complaining. They're the ones that are going to complain, Moshe, you made it worse on us. Yeah, you made it worse specifically on these middle-level managers who are now going to be beaten up by the Egyptians because the Jewish people can't make the same amount of bricks. Okay, so Datan and Aviram, we see, similar to Moshe and Aharon, they have themselves a certain level of leadership capabilities. Now, we also know that Moshe Rabbeinu is not the Ish Devarim. He's not really the speaker. And even Aharon, we mentioned from the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, he also was Kvad Peh, just he had Emunah in Hashem, so he became the Peh. But there's this concept with specifically by Moshe that he's not the biggest speaker. Now, in this week's parasha, what happens? Moshe calls Datan and Aviram. He wants to make peace with them. Come, let's speak. Let's have a conversation. And what do they say to Moshe Rabbeinu? We're not going to go up to you. We don't want to speak with you. So we also have this concept of they're not going to be speaking. And let's take it a step further. We spoke in the past that Moshe is known as the Kavad Peh. He really doesn't have that ability to speak. And therefore Hashem gives him a beautiful wife. Who's the wife? Tzipporah. Tzipporah is the bird who chirps, the cheep, cheep, cheep. The bird is always symbolizes, as we see in the halachot when it comes to the Metzorah, that the bird is the symbol of the speech Tzipporah completes Moshe Rabbeinu when it comes to speaking. So if we're saying right now, our parsha, Datan doesn't want to come and speak, so Datan might have a speech issue as well, so to speak. Who was Datan's wife? So based on Rashi and the Midrashim, Datan's wife is known as Shlomit Bat Divri. Again, the name Shlomit Bat Divri is a language of shalom. It's a language of divri. It's a language of speaking. So we have ourselves again another connection that Datan also needs a wife to complete his ability to speak. So Datan, we want to say, is this anti-Moshe. But Aviram, maybe we can say, is the anti-Aharon. Because first up, okay, what do we know about Aharon? Aharon is the Kohen. The job of the Kohen is to bring the Jewish people up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's like the intermediary that tries to bring us closer. What's the name Aviram? Aviram is the name of Aviram. Ram is to go up, to bring up to Avinu Shebashamayim. So it kind of sounds like his name as well is a certain level of trying to uplift you up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But then I was thinking, maybe we can go even starker, even sharper, and really show an Aviram-Aharon connection. So according to Rav Eliyahu Kitov in his Sefer HaPsukim, so he discusses who was Datan Aviram. You know, we have the earlier story in the Torah that Datan is the one beating up Aviram in Egypt. Those are the two Jews that were fighting. And Moshe says, "Why are you guys fighting?" And then Datan says, "Oh, you're going to kill me like you killed the Egyptian yesterday." So according to the way the Midrashim learn, the day before, the Egyptian that was beating up the Jew that he was beating up was Datan. Why was he beating up Datan? Because that was the Egyptian that slept with Shlomit Bat Divri. And we spoke in the past that the Megadef, the Mekalel, the blasphemer, he's actually the child that came about from that relationship. But says Rav Eliyahu Kitov that Aviram was somehow related to Shlomit and Datan. So it's not so clear from the Midrashim. It seems to be conflicting approaches. But either we say Datan and Aviram were brothers completely, and Aviram just like wanted to protect Shlomit, or maybe Aviram was also the half brother of Shlomit, because we mentioned Shlomit Bat Divri is from the tribe of Dan, according to this. So we have to have different mothers involved over here, maybe same father. I say different fathers, maybe same mothers, different fathers. So maybe Datan and Aviram are related through the father, and Aviram and Shlomit are related through the mother. Maybe that's how he made the shidduch. Here, marry my stepsister, my half sister. You can do the math and the ayin sham for the math. But basically, Aviram felt a special connection to try to protect Shlomit, because Datan wasn't sure what happened the night before with that Egyptian man. Was it be'ones or was it beratzon? Was it willingly or unwillingly? If it was unwillingly, if she was raped by that mitzvah, he can stay married to her. But if it was beratzon, then that's it. She's eshet ish. We have to have a divorce right now. And Datan didn't know what to do. So Datan was looking maybe to break the marriage, but Aviram right now came to protect Shlomit, and Aviram is saying, no, you shouldn't. It wasn't beratzon. The mitzvah did it on purpose. It was onus. It was rape. You have to stay married. So I was thinking, if we take this idea of the Sefer HaPsukim, Aviram is doing a maaseh of Aharon. What do you know about Aharon HaKohen? Aharon HaKohen is the Ohev Shalom, Rodef Shalom. He's the one that always made the Shalom Bayit between all of the people. So here we have Aviram also trying to make the Shalom Bayit. So we have ourselves Aviram, Aharon connection. Moreover, let's go back to Datan. We keep talking in the past that Moshe Rabbeinu is always trying to reach the level of the Sha'ar Nun. He wants to get to that 50th gate of wisdom. Well, what is the name Datan? The name Datan is Dat Nun. Dat would mean a tradition, the religion. He is all about trying to get to the tradition of the Nun. So he's the Datan, Dat Nun. So Baruch Shekivanti, so I looked around a little bit, and I want to see, does anybody maybe make this kind of connection? Maybe does anybody split up Moshe with Datan and Aharon with Aviram and Baruch Shekivanti? So I found it in the Givurot Hashem of this is the Maharal in Perek Yud Tet Siman Bet. So says the Maharal, the Kasher Tavin Divrei Chachamim Teda. When you look closely and understand the words of our sages, you're going to know Ki Datan ve'Aviram hem mitnagdim tamid leMoshe ve'Aharon. That Datan ve'Aviram, they are always these arch nemesis. They're always going to mess and try to fight against Moshe and Aharon. And he says, because just like we were zocheh to two great people like a Moshe ve'Aharon in Kiddusha, in Ma'ala, so too zeh le'umat zeh. We have it in the Ra side. We have ourselves these two Reshaim who are going to be Keneged Moshe and Aharon. And then he quotes a Midrash Teilim. So this is a Maharal based on Midrash Teilim. Midrash Teilim, Mizmor Kuf Vav, says the Midrash, Bikshu Yisrael b'midbar limnot Datan b'mkomo shel Moshe, va'aviram bimkomo shel Aharon. It's actually a teaching. If you open up the Midrash itself, it says Amar Shimon ben Yanai. It's a teaching based off of Shimon ben Yanai that we see clearly that Moshe was supposed to be Keneged Datan and Aviram was supposed to be Keneged Aharon. So the Midrash there doesn't really explain why or how, but Bezrat Hashem, and what we said until now, maybe we can see a little bit of their personalities actually paralleling each other. But sadly, the case of Datan and Aviram, even though they might have had some positive traits, as we see, there was some shalom bayit going on. There was this concept of taking the pain of the slavery on their shoulders, but ultimately they didn't use it correctly. Ultimately, they did become these anti-Moshe and Aharons, and once you're anti-Moshe, once you're anti-Aharon, you're anti-HaKadosh Baruch Hu as well. And ultimately, they reach their demise in this week's parasha. Shabbat Shalom.